Chapter 36, The Plan. All day long we ate up the road through Montana. It hadn't looked so far on the map, but it was all mountains. We started in the foothills of the Rockies as we left Yellowstone, and all day we climbed up and down. Sometimes the road snaked along the side of a cliff, and the only thing between us and a sharp drop was a piddly railing. Often, as we sailed around the bend, we came face to face with a camping trailer swinging its wide body around the curve. "These roads are a pisser," Gramps said, but he was like a little kid riding a hobby horse. "Giddy up! Let's get a move on," he said, encouraging the car up a hill. "Hee-yah!" he said as we swept down the other side. I felt as if I was torn into two pieces. Half of me was ogling the scenery. I had to admit that it was pretty as, maybe even prettier than, bybanks. Trees and rocks and mountains, rivers and flowers, deer and moose and rabbits. It was an amazing country, an enormous country, but the other half of me was a quivering pile of jelly. I could see our car bursting through the railing and plunging down the cliff as we approached each curve. I could see us smashing straight on into a truck or a camper. Every time I saw a bus, I watched it sway. I watched its tires spin dangerously close to the gravel at the road's edge. I watched it plunge on, eating up the road, defying those curves. Graham sat quietly with her hands folded on her lap. I thought she might sleep, especially after staring awake all night. But she didn't. She wanted to hear about Peavy. So all day long, as I took in the scenery, and as I imagined us in 1,000 accidents, and as I prayed underneath it all to any tree whizzing by, I talked about Peavy. I wanted to tell it all today. I wanted to finish it. On the day after Mr. Berkway appeared at Phoebe's house and told us about Mr. Cadaver, Phoebe and I were going to put our plan in motion. We were going to track down Sergeant Bickles' son and, according to Phoebe, discover the whereabouts of Phoebe's mother. I wasn't positive that Sergeant Bickles' son was a lunatic, and I wasn't convinced he wouldn't lead us to Phoebe's mother. But enough of Phoebe's tales had been transplanted into my brain so that I was caught up in the plan. Like Phoebe, I was ready to take some action. We could hardly sit still all day at school. Phoebe especially was fired up. She was worried too. She was afraid we might not discover her mother alive, and I was beginning to share that fear. At school, everyone was still buzzing about the journal readings. Everyone wanted to know who had written the journal entry about the murder. Alex avoided Mary Lou because of what she had said about his being a pink jerk, and Mary Lou avoided Beth Ann because of what Beth Ann had written about the chicken kisses. Megan and Christy taunted Beth Ann with, "Did you really tell Mary Lou that kisses taste like chicken? Did she really believe you?" And they taunted me with, "Do you really kiss trees? Didn't you know you're supposed to kiss boys?" Kisses were on my mind that day for other reasons. They were in the air. At lunch, my tray came in contact with Ben's mouth. He might have been aiming a kiss at my hand, a peculiar thing for him to do. But he ended up removing my bread crust from his cheek and dashing out of the room. In English class, everyone badgered Mr. Berkway to finish reading the journal entry he had begun yesterday, the one about Mrs. Corpse and the body in the garden. But Mr. Berkway did not read any more journals. Instead, he apologized for hurting people's feelings by reading their private thoughts aloud. And then he sent us to the library. There, Ben trailed me for the next half hour. If I looked at the fiction section, he was right there beside me. If I moved over to examine the magazines, there he was, flipping through one as well. Once, his face made contact with my shoulder. He was definitely trying to plant a kiss on me. I knew he was, but there was nothing I could do about it. I could not help it that whenever he aimed his mouth in my direction, my body was already moving away. I needed a little warning. I did try remaining completely still for several consecutive minutes, and during those minutes, I detected Ben was leaning slightly toward me several times. Each time, however, he drew back, as if someone were controlling him by an invisible thread. Across the library, Beth Ann called, "Sal, there's a spider. Oh, Sal, kill it." When the final bell rang, Phoebe and I were out of school like a shot. At Phoebe's house, we examined the telephone dictionary. We've got to hurry, Phoebe said, before Prudence or my father come home. There were 6 Bickles in the directory. We each took turns calling. Each time we asked for Sergeant Bickle. The first 2 people said we must have the wrong number. The third we dialed was busy. The 4th number, no one answered. The 5th number was answered by a crotchety woman who said, I don't know any sergeants. The 6th number was answered by an elderly man who must have been quite lonely because he talked on about once knowing a Sergeant Freeman in the war, but that was back in 1944, and he hadn't a clue as to what had become of Sergeant Freeman, and now that he thought about it, he also knew a Sergeant Bones and a Sergeant Doughty, or maybe it was Dowper. He couldn't quite remember, but no, he did not think that he knew a Sergeant Bickle. Although it would be nice to know a sergeant with the same last name as his own. What are we going to do? Phoebe wailed. Prudence will be home any minute, and we still don't know which is the right Bickle. Let's try the busy number and the unanswered one again, I said. The busy number was still busy. The previously unanswered one rang, and just as Phoebe was about to hang up, she heard a voice. Hello, she said. May I speak with Sergeant Bickle, please? There was a pause as she listened. He's still at work. Phoebe was jumping up and down. Thank you, she said, trying to make her voice serious. I'll call later. No message, thank you. Yes, she said when she hung it up. Yes. She was hugging me half to death. Let's go now, she said, quick, before Prudence gets home. She copied the Bickles' address from the phone book and left a note for Prudence and her father saying that she had gone to the library. The Bickles lived 3 miles from Phoebe's. We took a bus and walked the last half mile, stopping for directions about 30 times. I thought we would never find it, but at last we did. The Bickles lived in a brick ranch house in a new development. We walked up and down the street. There was a light on in the living room, but no car in the driveway. What if Sergeant Bickle drives up and sees us? He might arrest us, Phoebe said. Let's wait over there under those trees. We sat down on the grass in the empty lot several houses away from the Bickles. Why doesn't someone come out? Phoebe said. A car came around the corner and turned into the Bickles' drive. Oh, Lord, Phoebe said. Out of the car trundled Sergeant Bickle. He went into the house. We waited another half hour. Rats, Phoebe said. I guess we'll have to do phase 2. You'll have to do it tonight. When I got home, my father was pacing around the kitchen. Where were you? Why didn't you leave a note? He wanted me to go to Margaret Cadaver's with him for dinner. I can't, I said. I have tons of homework, and I'll never get it done. And he was disappointed. I guess I'll stay home then, he said. No, you go ahead. Really, I want you to. I'll heat up the leftover spaghetti. Really, I'll come with you next time, I promise. At 7 o'clock, I phoned the Bickles. I prayed that Sergeant Bickle wouldn't answer, but I was prepared to disguise my voice in case he did. The phone rang. I hung up. I rehearsed my voice and what I would say. I tried again. On the 7th ring, the phone answered. It was Sergeant Bickle. My name is Susan Longfellow, I said. I am a friend of your son's. Oh, he said. I was wondering if I might speak with him. I prayed and prayed that he had only one son. He isn't here, Sergeant Bickle said. Would you like to leave a message? Do you know when he might be home? There was a pause. How did you say you knew my son? He asked. This made me nervous. How do I know your son? Well, that's a long story. The way I know him is, actually, as this is a little embarrassing to admit. My hands were sweaty so much that I could hardly hang on to the phone. The library, yes, actually, I know him from the library, and he loaned me a book, but I've lost the book, and I wanted to... maybe you should explain all this to him, Sergeant Bickle said. Yes, maybe I should do that. I wonder why he gave you this phone number, he said. I wonder why he didn't give you his number at school. At school? Actually, the thing is, I think he did give me that number too, but I've lost it. You sure lose a lot of things, he said. Yes, that's me. A real scatterbrain. Would you like his number at school? Yes, I said. Or better yet, maybe you could give me his address and I'll just send him the book? I thought you said you lost the book. Actually, yes, but I'm hoping to find it, I said. I see. He said, "Just a minute." There was a muffled pause as he put his hand over the receiver and called, "Honey, where's Mike's address?" Mike! Brilliant! A name. I had felt like the chief inspector. I felt like I had just discovered the most important clue in a criminal investigation of the century. To top it off, Sergeant Bickle gave me Mike's address, and I was sorely tempted to end the conversation by informing Sergeant Bickle that his son was a potential lunatic, but I refrained. I thanked him and immediately phoned Phoebe. "You're brilliant," she said. "Tomorrow we'll nail Mike the lunatic."